Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and iTWireTV video. I'm joined today by Fred Laluyaux. He's the president and CEO of Aera Technology. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Thank you for taking the time. Now, Fred, we last spoke in a video in May 2018, which was just under a year after the company was founded in 2017. And we were discussing how Aera's cognitive AI technologies were helping companies make better decisions. Now, here we are in mid-2022, after 2 years of the pandemic and incredibly tough business conditions, which are now even more challenging thanks to inflation, war, and continued manufacturing and logistics challenges. Now, given that Gartner has recognized decision intelligence as a top industry trend this year, what is it? What are the tangible benefits for Australian and global businesses, given that you're a decision intelligence enabler and provider?
Yeah, so it's a very good context and a good question, of course. What is it? We define decision intelligence as the digitization, the augmentation, and the automation of decision making for enterprises. And the idea is to deliver with that technology, with that approach, the decision velocity and the decision scale that is required to cope with the massive demand in better, smarter, intelligent decisions that companies have to make on an ongoing basis. And you talked about the disruptions in the world today. They're absolutely obvious in every aspect of supply chain, manufacturing, people management. And this kind of technology comes as a way to really deliver the means that are required for those companies to cope with the speed at which decisions have to be made.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we have spoken about information overload for years. And we need these sort of technologies to be able to make sense of all this information and come to the right decision.
Yeah, it's information overload. It is getting to a point where if you think about a decision that you have to make, you have to consider so many factors: cash, cost, service level, but now also carbon impact, sustainability, a dimension. So there's every dimension that you're trying to make in a company is now optimizing for so many dimensions that the human brain cannot comprehend. And the speed at which the decisions have to be made is increasing all the time. It used to be that you would plan your work, you had a yearly plan, you would replan every month. Now you're in a situation where by the time your plan comes out, it's already obsolete. The conditions have changed. The supply is not showing up into the manufacturing side. The customer demand is changing all the time. You have to customize your offering. You have to customize your product. Everything has to happen in real time. And therefore, you combine the complexity of each decision with, again, the speed at which they have to be made, and humans organized in a big pyramid structured on top of a bedrock of transactional systems designed 50 years ago. ACP is now 50 years old. It's literally the concept were designed 50 years ago. And we're in 2022 and it doesn't work anymore. You have to leverage computers to help drive some of the execution if you want to remain competitive.
Yeah, I always like to say that technology is our friend, not our Terminator-like enemy that's going to destroy humanity. And this is a good example of how technology is helping us to overcome these challenges. But look, your team at Aera has been working closely with enterprises across food and beverage, consumer packaged goods, healthcare, life services, services, life sciences rather, so the services industry, infrastructure, and mining. Now, you just outlined some of the challenges that companies are facing, but what are some of the other biggest challenges that they're really facing your customers today?
Well, if you think about when we launched the company and we started talking 5 years ago about cognitive automation, which became decision intelligence, and the self-driving enterprise and all these concepts, it was really based on, as I explained earlier, the exponentially fast-growing increase in decision. Now, what happened in the demand for decision? What's happened in the last 3 years is the Great Resignation, is the gig economy, is the fact that the supply of decision making, aka other people in the office or at home making decisions with the tribal knowledge that have been accumulated over years of working for a company, knowing how the market behaves, knowing how to satisfy your clients, build the right product, knowing how to work the machinery of a big corporation, that knowledge is going away. So now you're a CEO, you're an operator in a big company. You have this incredibly fast-moving environment around you, which you're part of, and the people that are here to actually make the decisions and help run and optimize performance are not there anymore. Not necessarily there. You hear and you read about factory closing because of lack of qualified labor. It's not just because supply chain is breaking. The human supply chain is also breaking. So all these companies across the industries that you just mentioned and the ones we happen to serve are all facing the same challenges. Now, if you take industry by industry, there will be different types of challenges. The challenges of our customers in oil and gas are different than in consumer packaged goods. But the concept, the business environment is evolving in a way that is creating a need for support, a need for help, and that's coming from decision intelligence.
I do remember that it used to be that if you wanted to retain corporate knowledge, you tried to get everybody to put information into like a company wiki or something. But nothing can replace that human knowledge, and that was best demonstrated during the Y2K crisis when all these COBOL programmers had to come out of retirement to fix all these old systems, and they were the only ones left who could do it.
But look, I was a few years back. I was with a company in your neck of the woods where basically the whole planning process, this company has this raw material that's delivered, and they have to transform it, and that transformation happens and defines how the company is going to make money for the entire year. One person knew how to do that. There was literally one brain in the company that knew how to transform that raw material into this material and that other material. You find those dependencies even in the very large companies. Now, not just in our industry, in software, it's quite common that you rely on a few people really who know how the code works at the lowest level and how it's architected. But how that tribal knowledge is everywhere in large companies. Again, not just in technology.
So, I mean, where else can decision intelligence be applied? How is the system helping to capture that knowledge so that person who knows that, if they get hit by a bus, that's the end of their business, right? I mean, how is Aera helping to capture that and deploy decision intelligence across the business?
I like to say the person wins the lottery as opposed to be hit by the bus, but that's okay. The result is the same.
Yeah, that's right.
The result is the same. The person is gone. So look, when we ask ourselves that question, and the way we've approached this is by taking a bit of the principles of A/B testing. What the system will do, it will analyze your data from all your transactional systems. It will deploy some logic on top that you configure as a client. It will help you optimize inventory levels. It would help you optimize the way you're shipping your goods on the road. It will help you optimize your procurement process. What should you buy by when, which quantity, what happens if you wait 2 days here, are you getting a better price, and so on and so forth. So all those decisions are happening as the system delivers an analysis, and it comes to you in the form of a recommendation. Let's say, Alex, I recommend Aera will come to you in an inbox called a cognitive workbench. This is your new inbox where you interact with that system with Aera, and the system will say, I recommend that you hold that purchase order for this product for a couple of days as a result of this. And if you do so, we expect XYZ to happen within a certain time frame. And that coming to you with such a very precise recommendation gives you the opportunity to say, I've read what Aera suggested, I agree. Or I reject the recommendation, in which case the system will say, why? Give me the reason why you reject the recommendation. Or you'll say, you know what, Aera, I think you're okay about rebalancing inventory from this place to that one, or stopping a promotion campaign, but I want to tweak it. And all of that is captured. So the system comes to you with a recommendation and captures your response. And that's how we capture your tribal knowledge. So it's really kind of an A/B testing. I'll come to you with a recommendation that is very well defined. I captured your response, and over time, the system analyzes whether the recommendation delivered what was expected, whether your decision to accept or reject it was actually good. Sometimes it's actually good to reject a recommendation, and that's how you build that knowledge. So we like to say that the system is based on the concept of building a permanent memory of all the decisions that are being made collectively on a given business problem. And at the end of the day, you'll identify which ones of your operators are making the best decisions. And at some point, you basically are able to clone that capability at scale. And that's fundamentally how the system works.
And as you were describing that, I mean, it's great to see that Aera can help to ingest that knowledge so that, if that person does win the lottery, that corporate, IP is not lost. But also, Aera is clearly explaining its decisions. One of the problems with AI that people have spoken about is that it's a black box, and AI never explains itself. And the famous story of Facebook having some AI bots that started talking to each other in this made-up language that humans couldn't understand. And the last thing we need is for that to happen. AI always has to be at service to humans. It always has to be an off switch if you think about dystopian futures, but it's got to explain itself. And clearly that, those are the principles upon which you've brought it, which makes me also think of Asimov's famous 3 laws of robotics. Perhaps Aera will be inside of one of the robot brains, the positronic brains one day.
Well, one of the core principles, you're 100% right? Imagine that. So I think we have to be honest on a couple of topics, right? So the first one is automation versus augmentation. The train has left the station when it comes to complexity. And when our customers are very honest, while on one end, we like the romantic aspect of the tribal knowledge, the reality for most of the decisions that you have to make on an ongoing basis, the human operator is already currently lost. It's already way too complex. It's not like it's getting too complex. So the complexity creates 2 feelings. One is that you're incompetent and you cannot make the right decision because you don't know. So it's becoming like throwing darts on the board. And the other is that it's too slow. So you're always feeling when you go home at night that you've only covered 30% of what you're supposed to do. Now, that's very pragmatic. That's the life of someone who is allocating orders across multiple customers. You get in the morning, you have this workload. So go back in the Charlie Chaplin days, right? You get this big pile of paper on the desk and you come back and the pile. Well, that concept is already happening. So the first point is the tribal knowledge is there's a lot of it that's already being lost because the complexity is already there. And it's something that it's hard to accept, but a lot of our customers say, you know what, we're already confused and we need help. So it's not like it's scary if the system is going to be helping us. Yeah, the system is going to help you survive. This is pretty much what we're seeing on some functions. The second aspect is we do need to provide full transparency. Because when you provide a technology that goes all the way to actually automating a decision, right? Not just coming to you for a recommendation, but I've captured that enough that now I can run in real time. We need to really have all the capabilities for the humans to understand in real time what Aera is doing. Why is it managing exceptions? The way you're going to run a specific skill or competency for this customer might be different than for that other customer. So the ability to control, the ability to understand, the ability to trust how the system works is absolutely critical. This is not a new concept. We've been deploying this kind of technologies in warehouses, in manufacturing sites forever, for a long time. We've trusted mechanical arms to actually move things around a line, but it's being controlled by the humans. Well, the same thing is happening here, except that we're not physically moving a piece of metal from one place to another, but we're making decisions that will influence the way your supply chain, your procurement, your finance, your revenue management functions are operating. So that trust and that ability to control is really, really important. And black box really should be completely banned from the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got Amazon where entire factories are run by robots running around. I remember being in Japan at the Sharp factory, I think in 2004, and before it was owned by Foxconn, and they had these big robots at the time going through the factory floor with these giant LCD screens. So I mean, the robotics, and it's not just arms, but they're roaming around and doing whatever they're doing. And yeah, as you say, humans, we trust them. They're still controlled by humans. They're not autonomous.
And they're completely controlled by humans, and you need to control that. So we talk about control rooms. Talk about look, there's an analogy that I like to use quite a bit when I'm presenting right now to new folks. Is we have this one picture that represents the cockpit of I think it's Apollo 11. And then you see two seats, and then you see, of course, in that picture in that cockpit, a lot of dials and dots and lights. And how did you operate that rocket? You had to know as a pilot, so to speak, you had to know what are the dependencies, what happens if I turn that dial versus that one. And that's years of knowledge that you have to accumulate. That's your tribal knowledge, that's your experience. And then you contrast that with the picture of the Dragon 2, right? And then what you see, still two seats, but now the pilots are sitting behind two screens, and all that connectivity, knowing that if you move that dial, you have to move this one in parallel, one quarter, all this stuff is digitized. Now, the decisions, where are we going, blah, 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 are still made by the pilot, but you're seeing how technology has evolved. And this is rocket science, so to speak. Now, you look at it applying to cars, the way cars are being driven normally, where it's just a self-driving technology. Why couldn't we apply this kind of logic to a manufacturing site, to a distribution center, but also to a desktop work that has to constantly repeat the same logic? We can do it, and that's what we've done with the decision intelligence.
And with Apollo 13, when they said, Houston, we have a problem, I mean, they had Aera. It was called NASA Space Command. It was a bunch of humans running around. Now we have technology that can do that. It's built into the system.
And it allows to do all these adjustments that humans cannot do. It doesn't sleep. It works 24/7. And what's complicated in the world of an enterprise application, and the same thing that's complicated in a car, is to connecting that digital brain, that system, to the nervous system, right? So to think about take your car, imagine that it's not a self-driving car, it's a normal car. You can load a lot of widgets and gadgets and GPSs and lidars and sensors, but connecting all those different components so that they become self-aware. And connecting them to the pedals, the acceleration, the steering wheel, that's very difficult. That's something that requires to be built from the ground up, to be purpose-built. And that's what you can't retrofit a regular car to become a self-driving car, or you could, but it's a mad scientist project. And for enterprise system, it's the same thing. We had to build a technology that connects to the ERPs, but that brain itself is a self-contained element. And that's how we deliver on the transparency and the ability to control. That's because it's one coherent design system.
Now, it's been 5 years since you launched, 4 years since we last spoke. The term decision intelligence has come into vogue. So tell us about the Aera platform and the things you've done over the past few years to really help businesses take advantage of decision intelligence. And what are some of the key features, the new features that Aera has recently introduced for managing decisions that just weren't possible, when we last spoke?
So it's a great question, and boy, what a journey, right? So I've spent the last 25 years of my career in the same environment, and we've decided to crack that nut of decision intelligence at this goal today. As you're right, 5-6 years ago, with my co-founder Sharik. And when we started, not before long, you and I met and last talked. We said, look, this is what we're doing. We're building a cognitive operating system that will enable the self-driving enterprise. June 19, 2017, this paper is still online. I said, welcome to the self-driving enterprise. And I explained the concepts. Now, I wasn't hiding the fact that we had some breaks of technology, but we hadn't done it yet. And the Uber goal that we had, and I remember vividly setting that as a big company KPI, will be to get to 1 million decisions made by Aera. Wow, that seemed like completely untouchable.
Probably makes that every an hour or something now, right? Every.
Well, no, I mean it's not true. I mean it could, but it's. We were talking with one of our largest customers, and on stage at a conference called 0100, and that client basically said, we're on track to generating 1 million recommendations this year, basically in the span of 12 months. Now think about it, 1 million recommendations, orders being placed, PO being stopped, trucks being moved. That's a lot of volume. And that's just the beginning, right? Because the scope is expanding. So what did we do in the last 5 years? We built the technology. We experimented with the largest companies in the world to demonstrate the value and the scale. But then we discovered things like, how do I interact with this system? I'm an end user. I work on the shop floor, and the system is coming to me with recommendation. And what happens if the recommendations come on a Saturday morning and I'm at home and I still need to do something? Oh well, let's build a voice. Let's build a using NLP to actually make it like Siri or Alexa. So we basically, if you ask the feature that we built, we had some early prototypes of that, but we built that system that has this consumer grade interface, standardized, regardless of what the system is telling you. It's telling it to you in a coherent way. My vision was, when you interact with Siri or Alexa, I suspect you're going to like Siri better, right, Alex? I think
Look,
Siri is your favorite.
it is. It is. I love them all, but Siri is my favorite for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, you like Siri better. So think about Siri, right? It's one system of engagement that allows you to turn on the lights, get some directions, order some food. Same system of engagement. Think about it. That's a revolution. I mean, the same way your iPhone is one system of engagement, but that voice does that. Now project that into the enterprise world. I want to have one system of engagement that allows me to adjust the way my procurement systems are working, optimize my logistics, and run my promotions. So we've built that. So from 4 years ago, where we had the idea of how you resolve the data problem, how come we can, how to digitize decisions, we've really evolved to make it consumer grade so that it can deliver that scaling in terms of adoption, that transparency. And those are things that we've built with our clients, innovating, going like, all right, so we have an idea. What if we did it that way? And they say, let's try. And then, oh, is it working, not working? And we got into a point where now it's fully fleshed out, stable. So we're coming up with a skill store. So basically think about it as a platform. And now you can literally go on the skill store, pull the skill and say, well, I want Aera to have that intelligence. Can I find it? So we have an ecosystem of partners that are building skills that can be provisioned by our clients. So because the data model is normalized, you can actually plug a skill in very short amount of time. So again, that normalization, the consumerization of the experience and the level of engagement. And then, like always in our world of enterprise application, continuously working on scaling, continuously working on security. It has to work. If you are going to delegate the decision-making ability to a digital system, it has to work. And of course, the fact that you have an outage in your ERP instance in Dublin or whatever, the system on top has to work. So we continuously innovating and delivering the scalability and the features that allow the system to be working 24/7.
Well, hopefully, Aera is one day powering the Starship Enterprise as well as the Enterprise on all the enterprises on Earth.
I don't know if we want to be there, but there is an interesting concept behind what you just said, which is, if you think about why we're doing what we're doing it because we're convinced, and we've been convinced for a long time, that you want to make a better planet, you got to remove the inefficiencies. And we're talking about changing the way we consume, the way we do a lot of things, but we're still going to the store and we're still buying those shampoos, those soaps, those bars of cereals, those sodas, and all those products that we're consuming every day. So if we can help the companies who make those products be more efficient, be more, have less waste in their production systems and supply chains and so on and so forth, and save working capital to innovate, we end up producing a better planet. So with some of our clients, we're helping reduce the amount of raw material that's destroyed before it hits the production system, reduce the number of trucks on the road, reduce inefficiency that are consuming working capital. All this stuff are fundamental. And there is an Uber play, which is how can we, and that's in the future, but how can we build a model that connects those different enterprises so that once we're done getting all these internal efficiencies or efficiencies across suppliers and vendors, we can go across an industry and say, hey, company X, you're trying to ship half a truck load worth of merchandise from this place to that place. Maybe you have a competitor who is trying to do the same thing. But if you join those two, this is not differentiating. you can save a lot on cost, and you can save a lot of carbon being generated for the emitted on the planet. So there's a lot of value in resolving that data problem and that intelligence problem for within a company, but also across companies within an industry.
I'm just imagining as the Aera platform evolves, there must be learnings from one industry that are being, put into the system that are benefiting all these other industries, and without any, competitive secrets being shared. I mean, just the platform must be getting more and more intelligent. I mean,
correct.
You must be benefiting from Aera yourselves. It must be quite an amazing thing to be seeing the decisions that Aera is helping you make.
Well, we have this. We're not a big company yet, like the size of the companies that we're helping. We're not like Exxon or Unilever or Merck that are our clients that recently spoke at a conference with me. We don't have the same size, but still, we're using Aera on Aera every day. So as a technology company, we're using that technology, and it's fun. It's actually been a fun process. But look, I think there's no way turning back. I mean, this kind of technology is there to last. It's a fundamental transformation on the way we work. It's a transformation of the way economies are organized, and there's no turning back. We've let those technology come into our lives as individuals. We've struggled with the idea that they're going to come into our work, but it's happening, and it has to happen. It's actually a good thing, but it's going to come with a heavy transformation, and systems of values are going to be flipped upside down, and it's going to be a lot of change that we're going to have to accept. But I think it's one of the only ways for us to continue to consume without getting into a tough spot.
Yeah, well, as I say, change is one of the only constants in the universe. But look, you've mentioned some pretty impressive customers there. But are there any other local, Australian or global customers that you want to mention? And are there any other challenges that Aera helped them solve, and the outcomes of implementing your technology?
So I want to be careful because I don't know that I can mention the local customers, and sure. We have to connect because we have to respect those confidential. But yes, we definitely have customers in the regions, in the food and beverage, in life sciences. So we have. There's no difference, by the way. That's an interesting factor. The world is going completely flat. When I'm talking like I did last night with a beverage company from Australia, it's exactly the same set of problems and challenges than when I'm talking with a similar company in the Netherlands or in North America. Absolutely the same. And what's fascinating is all these companies, and it's something that we sometimes fail to realize, is that there's one common language around the world. It's enterprise applications. Every single company of a certain size around the world is using the same 10 products. And the way they work, the way they operate has been standardized like no other thing. You may have some very, very different cultures. However, whether you're a big conglomerate in Korea or in Germany or in France or in Australia, you're using the same technology, and the way you operate is incredibly similar. So there's no really, when we talk to a company in Australia or in another part of the world, and it's changed, right? I think the cloud has accelerated that in the last 10 years, even more. The same thing is that, same token, years ago, I was talking about hyper growth and hyper change and how it was so different between a large company and a startup. Today, it's the same thing. Access to data, access to talent, access to capital. It's sometimes actually easier in a small company than it is for a big company. So when I grew up after college, you had to go and work for a company, big company, to get access to those resources. It's been flipped on its head. So whether it's a small company or a big company, whether it's a company in Australia or in Canada, my experience, and I talk to a lot of companies, it's gone completely flat.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
The language of business is the most universal language of them all.
It is, really is. It's fascinating to see that, and it happened in our lifetime, so it's pretty cool to see that.
So what is a typical onboarding journey for a customer? What do they need to do to get started? How does Aera guide them through the process? Yeah,
so that's the thing, that when you listen to what I've been discussing with you for the last 30 minutes, you probably think, oh my God, it's too big for me. No, so the software in general, right, is becoming easier to build. faster and easier to build. There's a lot of analysis and the points of demonstration for that. It's also easier to implement. And when it comes to Aera, we can connect to the existing underlying system. Back to my previous point, all those systems are the same. The ERPs are the same. The CRMs are the same. You can connect to those systems. And what we've done with Aera is we have both the piping or / the plumbing to get the data in and out, because the system will write back in those systems. You've got the engines, but you also have the content. And that's something a little different, a little new. Imagine that your music player comes loaded with the music right away. You don't have to go and select it. Well, that was a revolution with, again, we're talking back to Apple here, like the merging of the two. It used to be that you have to buy a record and you have to buy the record players, and then you would manually play the music. Well, today, enterprise software, it feels like you have the record and the record players, and they're two different things. We have, as a new generation technology, combined the two again. So now when you're connecting the platform and you're turning it on, basically, it comes loaded with the content, which reduces the time to value to weeks. So we can talk to a massive enterprise, one of the world leader in their domain, with tens of thousands of employees, and get up and running, have end-to-end visibility into their data, and have that intelligence running in a matter of weeks, which is completely new. It's not completely surprising because of what I've just explained, but it is new because it's very difficult for legacy vendors, as I explained earlier, to retrofit their technology to do what our technology, which is literally brand new, is able to do today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how we help them, that was your question. Well, we provide expertise. We provide a big ecosystem. We have partners working with us. We have support. We have all the traditional tools that you need when you're thinking about deploying a new approach. But fascinating is the journey, right? The journey is completely fascinating because we're still exploring and going into areas that we haven't been before. So we are working with really, really cool clients who are just themselves, working with us and exploring. So some things that every time we learn something, is our job to kind of capture it, package it, and make it available to the community. We've had to launch a community, cognitiveautomation.com. We're trying to really bring that as a joint effort, because no one knows everything on that topic. It will take a few years. So I think for all is we provide a technology, but technology allows us to talk to pioneers, and pioneers innovate, and we can capture that and distribute that knowledge back to the communities. So that's a fun thing to do.
So how do you see Aera evolving over the next couple of years? And then separately, after you've answered that question, how do you see Aera in the 2030s, when the metaverse and AR extended reality glasses should be as commonplace as the smartphones and tablets that we use today?
Look, we're coming out of a complex situation for younger technology companies and for the world in general, right? COVID was difficult. It's very hard to innovate in that context. We talk about Zoom. Okay, well, video conferencing was not new and was not invented with COVID. This technology was already there. The company was already there. So
Zoom was 10 years old by the time COVID hit.
Exactly.
People don't know
right?
that.
And there was plenty of Zooms before Zooms, and it was, but that technology find its days of glory during that pandemic. So for us in the next couple of years, I don't want us to be that much different. I think we want to continue to do exactly what we're doing. We've had basically a full year. Well, not even actually, if you think about it, we started going out and meeting people again late summer last year, right? So about a year. So I want 2 more years of meeting customers, working. And look, I was supposed to be with you physically in Australia today, and I'm not because of what? Because of the pandemic. It's still not over, right? So I hope that in 2 years, we're full steam working with innovative companies like we are today around the world, and continuing to learn and improve the way we're doing this. That my milestone of 1 million recommendations a year for one client is dwarfed, and now we really have 80-90% adoption by key customers in specific industries, and that the level of automation is gone, to the 90s percent, because what's matter is system delivers a recommendation and it can be accepted and automatically executed. So I think we have plenty of metrics if you think about it, but I don't, we're starting the journey. So you're asking me like, you're starting the race, you're now racing. How do you, well, I just want to complete that race. And we're very clear in what we need to do. 2030, it's a really good question.
I mean, I know the TeamViewer, for example, talks about the industrial metaverse and how, they've got these headsets that Coca-Cola and others have been using for the past few years. The industrial metaverse already exists. By the 2030s, we should have the consumer metaverse becoming as common as the devices we use today. So, I mean, that's a bit forward, but it's coming fast.
It's coming fast, and I was going to go exactly to that area, which is today we're talking about digital twins for factories. Which is happening, but not yet. It's still an experiment. Well, if you have a digital twin, you need to have a digital brain that does something with that twin information. So I think we're starting to work on this. We have customers who are actively leveraging Aera on top of their digital twin technology. But can we say that Aera today, or decision intelligence, is now already autonomously driving how a factory is working? No, it's not there. It's helping, it's detecting, but we don't have yet that symbiotic, connection between the digital brain and the factory. The same way we have in the self-driving car, the digital brain that drives the car truly connects with the pedals. So I think there's going to be more work and more integration of the digitization of the physical world will become more and more a reality, and how the digital brain can connect with that. And I don't know what the outcome will be, but I think it will be quite positive. You think about companies that have 100 factories around the world, the ability to learn from one element, detect, apply to another, reducing downtime, improving supply chain logistics. There's so much that can be done there. So I think that's 2030 doesn't seem stupid to think that we're going to have some real connections between that physical world and that digital world, which is not very far from the metaverse story. And what I also think as a consequence will be, there will be a very different way on how you assess people's performance at work. There will be we have the luxury, I should say, of having Professor Joe Fuller from Harvard Business School joined our board 3 years back, right? And he's the co-chair of the Future of Work initiative at Harvard Business School. And we have fascinating conversation on what it means to be an information worker in 2030. With technology like Aera, it will be very different. How you're going to monetize your time, how much work you have to do to be able to, all this societal effect on this technology. I know it's not exactly what you asked me, but Aera will be at the center of those conversations, and we'll have a responsibility in how those issues are being handled and managed. So I think this is going to take more and more time and more attention on our side.
Now, as we get towards the end of the interview, I always like to ask, can you please share a memory of your first computer?
Okay, so first computer was the Atari, is it 800?
Yeah, they had a 400 and they had an 800. Yeah.
And I think, was it, they had the 400 and 800?
They had the two of them. And before that, I think they had the 2600.
I had the small one. It was the first one with the keyboard. I had the cheaper one. And I bought it used. I was in Paris. I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and I'd worked and I had like Christmas money. And I went and I bought the used unit at the store, the department store, the big department store in Paris. So I literally, my parents didn't want me to buy it. So I went and I bought it. It was half broken because kids had been banging on the keyboard, but I didn't care. Yeah. I had it. So I came home and I plugged it on the TV. And then I realized that, well, I don't know how to program. So I don't know what to do with it. Yeah. So again, we're talking a few years ago. Yeah. And I went to the library and there was a little magazine with like some basic code. So I remember spending like maybe 5-6 days
Yeah,
right? Oh,
days.
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 Writing, just literally like copying the code
Yeah.
from that little paper magazine
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
keyboard to finally get really nothing. But that's my first memory.
Yeah. Did it have the cartridge socket where you could plug in the games?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what that was the trick. I remember vividly that I wanted the one where you could still play the game if you wanted
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Now,
But then I think
yeah.
I discovered, I think you're putting your finger on something, because I think I vaguely now, I haven't thought about this for like 40 years, but that the games were not compatible with the previous console. And that was like heartbreaking because I didn't have the money to buy the new games.
Well, at least you could program some of them from computer magazines.
Exactly.
A lot of us, as kids
Exactly.
of the same era, had to do that. We had to type it in, and the computer magazines had it all there. And then you had, as you said, sometimes it was just nothing, but it was great fun anyway.
But
We
I was,
certainly
when
learned
it
a lot.
first showed something on the, when first something first showed up on the first graphic showed up on the TV, I was very proud.
Yeah, your parents must realize now, if they're still with us, that that was a seminal moment in your life, and it put you on the path towards technological success.
Yeah, that's funny.
Now, I always also like to ask, my second last question is, what is some of the best advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today?
I don't know that I've received so much advice per se, but I've definitely been inspired by people, and I kind of learned by being around them. And I remember the first time when I was a young college student, and I managed to find my way to the U.S. and spend some time with someone who was still a very dear friend of mine, like my second dad and a mentor, and just watching him in the US being an entrepreneur and living his life. And I was 20 going like, wow, that's super cool. And that kind of moved me into trying to do things like that. In terms of advice, I think after my first startup, I had the first company when I was 23 to 27 years old in France, literally in a garage, before the name startup was even known in that part of the world, with proper venture money. And it turned out to be a failure because the thing called the internet came and wiped the technology that we had built away. And I was a little bit depressed. What am I going to do? And I think that I had this gentleman that I respected a lot, and I had different job options, and some of them are very a little gray. And one was not gray, it was with that software company, and that was still a bit nebulous. And I was going to go with the gray thing. I felt like, okay, I've been silly for 4 years. Now I'm going to try to be serious. And I remember him telling me, do what your heart tells you to do. Do what's going to be fun. You're going to be good if it's fun. And then I made the choice to go with that fun company, which was still a software company, but it looked a lot more fun than the other stuff. And yeah, that ride has been lasting for 25 years. So I think advice would be do what your heart tells you, and go where you think you're going to have fun, because if you have fun, you're going to be better. You're going to last longer. You're going to be more resilient. And you can end up, fun for you. It might be fun for very different than what's fun for someone else. Why do I like to speak with you about enterprise software and the future of technology? I don't know, but it's been part of my life for a long time now. And this is what I like to do.
And my final question is, what is your final message to iTWire viewers and readers, and to your current and future customers and partners?
The message that I have these days, I'm using a lot, because the category is getting defined. Everybody's talking about it. Gartner's talking about decision intelligence. And you go like, in the past, I've seen technology evolution. I remember when my last company, 2012, became quite successful around data modeling. We had to explain what the cloud was. And I'm talking 2012, 2013, being in front of CIOs, CEOs and say, trust me, the cloud is safe. You can use it. And I used to say the reason why you have to trust the technology in the cloud is because innovation is only going to happen in the cloud. If you don't want to be left behind, and I was right, that was 10 years ago, but I promise you that when I was telling that to a CIO, would tell me, well, SAP is still like that, Oracle is still like that. I was like, yeah, okay, but innovation, real innovation will only be happening in the cloud. If you don't want to be left behind. And then suddenly around 2015, 2016, problem went away. It became easy. And those who waited, they didn't die. They were still able to catch up, right? If you didn't jump on the bandwagon of cloud in 2012, but you did in 2016, not a big deal. I believe that with decision intelligence, it's different. I believe that one of the benefit of starting early is to start building your own DNA and your own memory and your own data set. You become your own mini Google or your own mini Amazon in your own world, and that allows you to become smarter. And it's going to be an exponential race. If you don't start now, and if you decide to wait 3-4 years and see how it plays out, you might be left behind forever. Look at the power of Amazon in the economy. It's because they invented this, right? It's not just them, it's a few other companies as well. And we're talking with a lot of very smart executives around the world. We've realized that in 2022, post-COVID, they don't have a choice. They have to start. So this time is different. Your ability to start early and start building your own data set, your own memory of all the decisions you're making to learn and become more efficient is going to be your competitive advantage of a few years from now. But it's also your ability to survive against the competitors who have started on that journey and are beating you and you don't know why. So, I think that would be my advice is you need to jump in, you need to make the effort. And I know a lot of companies are fatigued with transformation, another transformation, another. Yes, I get it. But the way we build the technology, the way we approach this allows you to get there pretty fast. And if you want to attract young talent, if you want to attract and retain your employees, you got to provide technology that feels similar from an experience than the one you have at home. And having a gray screen with big windows and characters that look like Windows 3.1, you can't retain talent with that. It's over, game over. So we're in 2022. And I think this technology wave is here to last, and you have to start early.
Well, Fred Laluyaux, President and CEO of Aera Technology, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you again, to see the growth over these past 4 years, and to hear about the good things that are coming and still to come. So thank you very much, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
That would be my pleasure. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.